Welcome back to the Photaudiography podcast. I'm your host Luke, and today I'll be talking all about how to set up basic portrait lighting and different ways to set this up, especially if you have limited area where you're working. While setting up lighting may seem daunting, I assure you, once you have your setup how you like it, it's easy to get it set up wherever you need it or whenever you need it. First things first, I would like to talk about the equipment you will need. There are many different options, so I'll try to cover a variety, but my focus, as always, is for the hobby photographer who would like to either have a portable lighting setup for portraits or a home studio lighting setup for portraits. There are three different options for actual light sources when it comes to buying equipment. There are speedlight flashes, studio strobe lights, and continuous lights. I'll go more in depth here with the pros and cons of each type of lighting and then explain the ways to set up your lights. Speedlight flashes are the external flashes that can be hooked to the hot shoe of your camera. You can use these off the camera either using a remote triggering system, or some speedlight flashes have optical triggering mechanisms which allow the flash to be triggered when another flash goes off. Speedlights are battery powered, but some have optional accessory battery packs to help them last longer. Speedlights are very portable and lightweight and are good if you don't have a full-time studio setup or you need to travel with your lighting. The second type of lighting is studio strobe lights. These lights are usually larger than speedlights but are more powerful. Studio strobe lights are often powered by connecting them directly to a power source, but some can be run off battery power. Studio lights are becoming more portable, but they are still more cumbersome than speedlights and usually need a power source since they are a high-powered light and therefore need more electricity. Depending on your studio lights, you will need to use a wired or wireless triggering system, but some studio strobe lights offer the optical triggering mechanisms. The last type of lighting I would like to talk about is continuous lighting. Continuous lighting is often used for lighting video sets, but it can certainly be used in portrait lighting. With LED lights becoming more popular and available, this helps reduce the amount of heat created by these lights and makes their power consumption more efficient. If you plan on shooting video where you will need lighting, I would recommend leaning toward choosing continuous lighting for your portraits. Something to consider when using continuous lighting for portraits is that your subject will be constantly under these bright lights during the entire photo shoot. Like I said, with LED lights, they're less hot than the traditional incandescent or fluorescent lights. However, it still can be uncomfortable being under bright lights constantly for an extended period of time. Depending on your situation, you may want to use a combination of these types of lighting. If you are in a home studio, you may want to use some continuous LED light panels to provide ambient light in the room, while using several speedlights to set up the actual lights for your subject. The most important thing to keep in mind is that you want the color temperature of all your lights to be the same. This is why many photo studios are dark and might have the windows covered with heavy curtains, and only the lighting in the studio is the light coming from the studio lights. Most household lamps and light fixtures have different color temperatures, which can be tricky for your camera to decipher what the proper white balance is, and make it difficult when trying to correct the white balance of the photo. Let me take a moment here to talk about some other equipment other than the actual lights you should have for studio portraits and lighting. First, having a reflector is a good idea because it is like having another light source, but it is inexpensive compared to buying another light. You can even use a piece of white poster board as a reflector. You'll also need some light stands so that you can safely and properly set up and adjust your lights. If you're buying a studio lighting kit, it may come with light stands, but this is something you might want to double check when you're buying one. Also, you will most likely need some diffusers or umbrellas to soften the lighting for your subject. Now that we have the equipment, let me explain how to set up this studio lighting for a basic portrait sitting. For a basic portrait sitting, you usually need at least 2 lights. The main light is called the key light, and the other light is called the fill light. You can also use another light to brighten the background and a hair light to give more depth to the photo. Next, let me talk about the placement of the lights. From the subject's point of view, the key and fill lights should be positioned at 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. This is a good starting point for the 2 main lights, but you can move them based on how you would like your photo to look. If you only have 1 light, you can use a reflector as the fill light. Your key light should be the brightest, and then your fill light should be slightly dimmer. Depending on what look you are going for depends on how dim you want to make your fill light. It may help you to start by only turning on your key light and finding a good setting, and then turn on your fill light. When adjusting your settings with the key light, keep in mind that it is okay to have the shot underexposed because you will be adding in the fill light. If you have a hair light, it should be above the subject and pointing down. This can really help give your portrait a polished look. Hopefully these tips gave you a taste of studio lighting and made it seem a little less intimidating for you. And I think that's enough bad advice I have for now for you, so I'll see you later, Shutterbugs.